episode of Small Town Expectations. My name is Brandi Rose, here with my wonderful, beautiful partner, Haley Bassing.
Hello.
We are here bringing you another story, another small town expectation with a fabulous dude. We're going to tell you more about him in just a minute, but first, we want to encourage you to go to your iTunes app. If that's how you listen, go to your iTunes app and rate this podcast. Give us 5 stars would be pretty stellar, but let us know what you think right there on that iTunes app. The more rates we get, the higher we are in the ratings. We're not even close to being in the ratings yet, but the easier it is for people to find this podcast. And that sounds really weird, but when we were first starting out, you literally had to type every single letter out before it would pop up. And we have 13 rates now, and that sounds really crazy compared to, whenever you listen to other podcasts, they're talking about their tens of thousands of rates. We have 13. But still, with that 13 rates, you might notice that you don't have to type in the entire word anymore, and the entire title. It actually starts popping up. And that's because people are recognizing the podcast, and so that's cool.
Yeah.
So the more people that search for it, the more people that rate it,
And subscribe to it.
Ooh, especially subscribe, because then you're getting the episode as soon as it comes out. So definitely go to your iTunes app and do that, or go to wherever you're listening, on whatever app you're listening to it on. If you're listening on the internet, at radbrandi.com, you can actually go to WordPress and you can rate us on WordPress as well, and you can subscribe on WordPress. So definitely do that. And we have a brand new email address that you can tell us what you think of the podcast right there. It's smalltownpodcast@yahoo.com. That's where you can email us if you're interested in being on the podcast and telling your story, sharing your expectation with the whole entire world, or if you just want to tell us what you think.
We're looking for feedback. If there's some things that we do that make you crazy, let us know, and we want to adjust it. This is for you, the listener.
Yeah. It's fun because, this journey of, experiencing something a year and a half or so ago now, when I experienced losing a job, losing something that I really loved, something that I was really passionate about because I was going to be true to myself in the world, but then picking up this journey and being on this adventure since April of this year has just been really fun. And what we really realized that while this is cool to have this microphone and do all of this fun producing and being with folks and hearing their stories, it's really neat to hear what other folks have heard from other people, how other people have been inspired by those stories, and inspired by other people who have given the opportunity to tell their story.
Just like our guest on the show today, he pushes a lot of boundaries in good ways, maybe bad ways. I don't know. I think I don't think
bad at all.
You're going to have an open heart and a bit of an open mind to listen to the podcast today.
Which hopefully that's something that you continually have when you come to our podcast, is an open heart and an open mind, because we don't fit into a box. Nobody that comes on this show fits in a box.
Yep.
And I think that's what's special about our show.
Yeah.
So we want to definitely highlight something that we experienced last night. We have been down in Durango a lot for different productions and things. And Haley was recently working on a production called
Living the Rainbow.
Living the Rainbow. I was like, I'm going to say that wrong. I know it. And this was just a fun production put on by some local Durango folks, where it gave people the opportunity to go onto a stage and share their coming out story. And so it was queer content about their journey, really. There were singers, there were storytellers. It was a really neat experience. That's how we met our guest today. Mm-hmm. But before that show, there was something. There still is something set up in that gallery at Durango Arts Center. And we experienced it together, and were moved in different ways, and also came out of it with different experience. And so we wanted to share that with you. It's 20 Moons Dance Theater, and you walk into this pretty quiet, really dim lit room. It's the gallery at Durango Arts Center, and there were just folks dressed in white just kind of,
White walls, white,
yeah.
everything.
And I think the best way to describe it was they were just experiencing what they felt, how they felt moved.
Yeah.
Accurate?
Kind of I had a different lady sign us in than signed you in.
Yeah,
and I
you
feel
got
like
there before me.
Experienced it a little bit, or
Explained it.
yeah. She explained it a little bit differently than your lady. But just that, what is truth? So that's what you go in you're kind of thinking about, and then they have all these signs telling you to leave with intention and leave with purpose. So they were trying to create this atmosphere, this mood, this sound, this light, this feeling of just calm and peacefulness in whatever way that looks like. They had these weird pallets on the floor, and you could sit there and lay down, or you could sit on these white blocks that they've created for you. And some of the dance group were dancing. Some of the dance group was playing music. Some of them were just being a smiling face whenever you walked into that room.
There was a person sleeping on the floor.
And I don't know, when I was in there were a combination of one of the talent was sleeping on the floor, and then there was a audience member, a viewer, art goer, whatever you like to label them as, asleep on the floor as well.
And it's because they encouraged you to go in and do whatever you felt moved to do.
Yeah.
And so that person in particular felt moved to lay down and rest.
Yeah.
So sort of our experience in this, I walked in and I was like just smiling. I don't think I could stop smiling because I was in like imagery overload, I feel like, and it was all just white walls and everybody was wearing white, but so many people, I just couldn't stop looking at the people.
You were uncomfortable.
Yeah, okay.
And they offer you to, take your shoes off and do whatever you need to do to be that. So it's like, here, let's strip you down and make you vulnerable in order to experience this way.
I didn't like the way I felt when I first walked in, so I was just uncomfortably smiling the entire time. But then for me, I started reading all of the things that people were writing on the walls, and the question that people were asked before they wrote on the wall was, what is your truth? And I heard a podcast a couple months ago, it's maybe even been a year ago, that this writer and this activist and this, she's a really neat person. Her name is Kate Bornstein. She said something along the lines of, your truth doesn't have to be everyone's truth. And that's not like word for word what she said on this podcast, but that's something that has stuck with me, that not everyone's truth is everyone's truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that has stuck with me, and it's something that I've remembered, especially because of my faith and because, people know my faith. I wear that definitely on my sleeve sometimes. And it's not anything that I hide, but it's also not something that, I'm not like other people in our country, especially, who share the same belief system as me, and it's because my truths aren't the same as even their truths.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I have to treat people the way that some people treat people who claim the same faith system as me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So with that said, I'm sitting there and I'm reading all these people's truths, and I wrote down Kate's words, and I just got really emotional, and I'm even getting emotional just thinking about it right now. And then I started I read our friend Sam's, what she wrote about her grandma, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then Haley came up and saw that there were tears in my eyes, and she just started hugging me, so then more tears just started coming out, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm crying. Why am I even crying right now? Why am I crying right now in this second? I have no idea. But then my sister, she drew this really beautiful sketch of a woman, and she had bags under her eyes and her hair was a mess, and she was like, that's me. And it was like her self-portrait of her being tired and overwhelmed and stressed out, and she drew it really beautifully with a black marker on some white paper. And so it was just moving for me. I don't know, it was a really strange feeling. I walked in awkward and uncomfortable and left like, wow, that was really neat. And Haley had a different experience. She had a different feeling. So,
I ended up writing on the walls that our truth is theater. It's experience. It's your sight, your sound, your vision. And then I wrote down something to the effect of your memories are lies. So the show that we just performed at Durango Arts Center, I was teching with one of, I want to call her my friend. She's one of my friends, Sam, who is queer. Myself is queer. And then Selena, she's one of my friends who we know through Theater World. She was stage managing. So I think I want to advertise that this was a great experience in the fact that we could tech a show about queers and being this queer team, of women, that we know our craft well enough to produce this show, which I really enjoyed about that.
Yeah.
But in the middle of this, I texted an ex who I was dating at the time that I came out, and I just thanked her for being a peaceful person in my life. And then I apologized for all the drama because I watched these people on stage come out and relive those moments as I was reliving these moments in my head. And I'm a different person today than I was 10 years ago, right? And so that my memory, what I'm thinking about and what I remember up here isn't necessarily fact. It isn't necessarily truth. I thought I was this kind of person 10 years ago. And today I'm this kind of person.
Yeah.
You remember the good things and you block out the bad things, vice versa, whatever. So that whole Durango Art Center experience, the truth in the gallery and the theater experience all played next to each other, side by side.
It was good stuff. So if you want to check out and you're curious about this What is True gallery experience, you can visit 20moons.com. They have a website. Visit it and learn more about it there. It's also at the Durango Arts Center right now for, I don't know for how long. So, of course, today is November 18th. So, who knows?
Today. No, I think they shut down at 7 this morning.
There we go. So, they're done. Sorry, visit their website. You're going to visit their website to learn more. I'm sure that gallery, I'm sure they'll open that back up again eventually.
I mean, be an artist in every way.
Yeah. And that just sort of leads us into introducing our wonderful guest today. His name is Patrick Valentine. He's fabulous. He tells a really cool story about growing up in Morocco, moving to Hawaii, and his experiences there, which are beautiful and just really amazing. To being a man in Durango, Colorado now. He's married to a wonderful, wonderful man named Lawrence. That's who's in the picture with us, that is posted with this podcast. So yeah, check it out, give it a listen, and don't forget to rate and email us your thoughts. Enjoy today's podcast. This is Patrick Valentine.
For the benefit of Mr. Kite, there will be a show tonight on Trampoline.
Hi, everybody. My name's Patrick Valentine. I'm going to be 70 years old in March, and that's a milestone decade for me because I was first born in Long Beach, California in 1949, and I've lived long enough to see lots of evolution happen during those decades.
Yeah. So in 49, Long Beach, California, tell us a little bit about your family and what that was like.
Well, my family is an interesting composite. We're kind of on the dying out phase because our family's kind of running out of relatives that are still alive. My brother does some genealogy, and he's traced all of our tombstones of relatives all the way back. And we found out that we came out of both Yankee and Confederate stock.
Wow.
And as the two family teams moved westwards, my father's family ended up sort of going to San Francisco, and my mother's family went from the south into Texas after a hostile event where my relative shot a neighbor in a grazing dispute and killed him. He moved the family to Southern California. And at some point, the South and the North in California got together in the West, and here I am.
Awesome. So how long did you live in California?
I grew up there pretty much for about 5 years, and then my dad got transferred to Tangiers, Morocco, and he worked at the naval attaché's office in the embassy there. So I remember as a kid flying to Washington and eventually flying across the Atlantic to Morocco. And I remember the planes in those days flew pretty low and you could see the ocean.
Yeah.
And the pilot told us to look out the windows and we could see a pod of whales swimming through the ocean.
Wow.
And that's my earliest memory, probably around almost 6 years old or so.
Wow, that's really neat. And so did you actually live on the base?
No, we had a beautiful apartment in downtown Tangiers, Morocco. And we had a maid that we hired. Her name was Carmela, and she was a major influence in my childhood because she was so loving. Every morning I'd run into her little maid's bedroom and climb in bed with her, and she would tell me stories in Spanish about what it was like living in those times. And when we left Tangiers on a ship to come back to New York, I was so heartbroken waving goodbye to Carmela.
Yeah.
It was so great. Years later, I found, after my parents died, I found a letter from Carmela my mother had written, and it was in Spanish. And as I read through it at the very end, she says, "And give my love to the niños," which she meant my brother and me.
Yeah.
And I just cried. It was so touching.
So how long did you live in Morocco?
It was almost 3.5 to 4 years. And it was an exotic place, and it was beautiful. As a kid, we used to play in fields where there were wild goats grazing right around our apartment building. And one day my brother was out teasing a goat, and the goat got pissed off and charged him. And my brother ran back to our apartment, opened the door, but it didn't close. And the goat got in the lobby and tried to follow him up the marble steps, but couldn't walk on the slippery steps. And it was just really a crazy time to be a kid. It was so fun.
That sounds like a fantastic childhood.
Yeah, my dad, one time we were driving along, we saw a guy with donkeys, and he had goats sitting in the baskets of the donkeys as he's taking them someplace. And my dad said, "Watch those goats' horns. They're going to scratch all the cars that are parked along the road." Yeah, it was an exotic life, but that was normal life to me at the time.
Yeah, so that's like probably early 60s or so, right?
Oh, no, let's see, that was back in the 50s, probably around 55, 56.
Okay.
And when we had some spare time, we'd run over to the Spanish cemetery and climb over the wall, trying to avoid the broken glass bottles they put in the plaster on the top of the wall. Mm-hmm. And we'd go over to pick pine nuts. And it was always fun to do that, except when the caretaker came out and shot his gun in the sky to chase us off.
Oh, no. So do you ever remember the people, like the people who lived in the villages or the city, all of those things?
We had our apartment was very modern and we had a fireplace, slate floors, beautiful. But every morning the egg lady would come to our door, and she had a basket of eggs, and Carmela or my mom would pick out eggs for the house. Mm-hmm. And we did our grocery shopping at an open air market called the Soko. And Mom always had to hang on to me and my brother, so she was afraid of kidnappers and all kinds of things that she was worried about. But we'd see all the vegetables laid on carpets on the ground, and that's how we shopped for our food. Mom didn't like buying meat because it hung raw in the hot air with flies all over it. Uh-huh. That was kind of a traumatic experience for her.
Yeah. Well, and I just imagine the fruit and I don't know, I think the picture that I have in my head is just this really rich culture and these really just bright, vibrant colors. I don't know why I have that in my head, but
exactly right. When we walked through the Soko Grand Marketplace, it was a crowded, bustling maze of alleys and shops, and you could smell the leather shop and all the smells coming out from the poofs and hassocks and camel saddles. And you go to the next shop, it'd be all brass products. You could smell the brass. There were spice stands where spices just pungent in the air. It was just a wonderful experience.
Yeah. And I think that as a child, that must have been just such a significant moment for you that I don't know, that culture is so rich. And I just feel like that kind of that was the beginning of shaping who you are.
Sure. And there were a lot of Americans, they called them expats, expatriates, who had moved to Tangiers to find more freedom. Mm-hmm. And some of them were people like Paul Bowles, the famous author and composer. He was a gay man, and his wife moved to Tangiers with him, and she was a lesbian woman.
Wow.
And they both had lovers that was illegal in Tangiers to be a gay person. But my parents would often go to parties that were extravagant. They'd have shipwreck parties with rafts floating in the swimming pool, and everybody came dressed like torn up, ragged survivors. There were Roaring Twenties parties. The embassies threw great parties, and I just was so inspired by all these costumes my parents would wear to these events. And they went to parties and met these intellectuals. There, like I said, Paul Bowles, Allen Ginsberg, Timothy Leary, the LSD pioneer. They were all there, and they would appear at these parties periodically. And my parents got to meet some of them. Mm-hmm. Of course, I was a little kid, so I stayed home with Carmela, but I loved that too.
Yeah, that's neat. So after Morocco, then your dad, I think, is he transferred or?
Back to the United States, yeah.
Okay, and then he gets sent to Hawaii, right?
Well, no, actually, before that, he drove us on the old Route 66 across America, and we got to California. He wanted to go to San Francisco, where he was born. Mm-hmm. We got there and lived there for a number of years, and it wasn't until I was out of high school in 1967, I went to college for a year or two. That's when everything snapped for me. I said, I didn't like this college situation. And I met some people, and we talked, and said, let's go to Hawaii. And it was just me as a renegade with my friends. And we took off. Back then, you could fly to Hawaii for $50 on a student fare.
That would be amazing.
And so, yeah, we got to Hawaii, and the first thing I noticed when the airplane door opened was, boom, a huge, warm puff of humidity hit me in the face. I said, this is really good.
Yeah.
And we took another little airplane flight to Maui, where we'd heard there was a jungle and a place we could live. And so we thought we'd be Tarzans and go live in the jungle and eat fruit. Well, we were very naive.
Yeah.
The first night I got attacked by mosquitoes. I looked like I had chicken pox the next morning.
Oh, no.
And so we heard about a little beach on the far side of the island, and that's where I had this most transformational experience of my life. In 1969, my friend and I went to McKenna Beach. They call it Little Beach today. And there was a commune of naked hippies, and we joined it. Mm-hmm. And within a matter of weeks, my life started to change big time because I was forced to grow up. I had no money. I had no food, no job. And somehow the local natives who come to fish at the beach on the weekends would bring us little cans of Vienna sausages and tuna. And they feel sorry for us and give us food. But one day I saw this naked, bare-breasted woman reading tarot cards in the sand. And I was so intrigued by the pictures on the cards. I asked her, what are those? And she said, tarot. And I said, well, what is it? I mean, and she told me about what tarot was. And within a couple of days, we become good friends. And she walked me down the dirt road one day saying, you know, you are an interesting person. And my tarot cards, I did a reading on you. And they said that you need to go there. And she pointed across the ocean to an island I barely could see. And she said, that's the big island of Hawaii. And I see that you need to go there. And I said, okay, but it didn't mean much at that time. Uh-huh. Within about 2 months, I realized I wasn't going to survive on this beach very well. No clothes, hardly, and no money. So I went to the welfare office to try to get them to contact my folks and send me home. Well, my parents were totally upset that I was there. I hadn't told them I was going. I was kind of a runaway with a friend I thought might turn out to be a gay friend, but he wasn't. Mm-hmm. He ran off with a girl he met at the beach. And next thing I knew, I did get my ticket home, and my parents were livid. I went back to school to get a cooking school degree at City College, and I met a kid whose dad owned a hotel on the Big Island where I'd been told to go. So I took my friend in cooking school, and after we graduated, I said, I need to get to Hawaii. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I said, hey, Kimo, let's go down and visit my grandma. We'll go to Disneyland and have some fun after we graduate. And he said, sure. And I kind of buttered him up. And next thing I knew, he was back home, and I got a letter one day saying, here's a ticket to Hawaii. My dad wants to bring you over for a short visit with us. Well, that short visit lasted 30 years.
That's awesome. And so much of that 30 years shaped who you are. And so tell us a little bit more about what that looked like for you.
Sure. Well, just before I left to go to Hawaii, I went downtown San Francisco to an old bookstore looking for a book on tarot cards that I'd learned about. when I was on the beach in Maui. And when I walked in this old building, I went upstairs and down a long dark hall. It looked like a private detective's office from the 1940s. And I walked in and there was a little counter and the man said, "Yes, can I help you?" I said, "I need a book on tarot." He says, "I have one." He went and got it, and it was called The Absolute Key to the Occult. And I said, "Oh, that's kind of weird." I bought the book, opened it up. I didn't know what it was, gobbledygook to me. But I took it to Hawaii, and there I began my quest into the spiritual realm and the metaphysical realm. And that's been my life-sustaining force ever since.
Yeah.
In Hawaii, the first person I was introduced to after meeting my new boss, my friend's dad, was a Hawaiian kahuna, a priest. And the first story I heard from him was what almost kept me from going to Hawaii. That family, my boss's family, was building a new hotel on the island. And one day, a water spout came from the ocean, and it came onto the land. It dodged the new buildings that the kahuna had blessed, and it went up the hill and tore down 9 stories of steel that was being constructed for the hotel.
Wow.
And the family didn't know if they could afford to bring me over, but they did regardless. And so that opened up a can of worms, because it started a quest that I had never perceived was something I could achieve, but it was a spiritual hunt for the meaning of my life and what I'm doing in Hawaii. And over the 30 years, I've had some incredible experiences, which, if you're interested, I can share a couple of the better ones.
Yeah, of course.
Well, one of the things I learned about beliefs in Hawaiian spirituality was that the breadfruit tree was one of the food sources for Hawaiians. But a breadfruit tree that had branches facing to the east and the west as you go up the trunk, the first branches, that was a spiritual tree. And I heard that they used to take the umbilical cords from newborns and tap a hole in the tree that was shaped kind of like a woman's private parts. And they would tap that umbilical cord into the tree. And they would then come back and see if it was still there. That was a good sign. If it had been eaten by the rats, it was a bad sign. But what that meant was, if it was a good sign, when you died as a human being in Hawaii, they believed your soul would go back to that tree and go up into either the eastern or the western branch. And the reason for that was that the spirit guides would tell you which branch to grab a hold of. And if you had been a bad person in your life, they'd trick you into grabbing the wrong branch, and that would send you to hell.
Okay.
If you were good and you grabbed the right branch, they guide you to that, you'd go to heaven and be forgiven for all your. So it was a real interesting thing. And so I started looking for an east-west breadfruit tree, and I could never find one. Hundreds of trees, and I never found one like was described. Years later, after I was married, my wife and I, she went over to the side of the island opposite of where we lived, and she calls me and says, "Hey, Patrick, I think I found the tree you've been looking for." And I freaked out, because at that very moment, I was painting a painting of a Hawaiian priest communing in nature. And about a week later, we went over to visit some friends, and they had this tree on their property, and my hair stood up. My skin got chicken bumps all over it. And this was an 80-foot tall tree with east-west trunks growing out of an ancient stone wall right by a Hawaiian temple that sat on my friend's property. And I was stunned. So one night we went out to do a little meditation under the tree with a group of friends. And the hostess of the house brought something out to offer to the gods, an apple wrapped in a green leaf. And she says, "I'm going to offer this to the tree." And she plunked it right in the middle of the 2 trunks and sat down in a semicircle. And I said, "Now everybody be quiet and just listen to the leaves rustling. And if there's spiritual energy in the tree, you might feel it." Right a few minutes later, the apple came flying out of between the 2 trunks, landed right in front of the hostess, scared the hell out of everybody. They all jumped up and ran into the house to have more margaritas. And I sat there with the tree and just felt this incredible energy.
Wow.
It was totally a stunning experience. And I've had probably 5 or 6 other ones like that.
And so what was the inspiration that you felt after that moment?
Well, I was totally turned on inside, and driving home, we had about a 100-mile drive to get home, 130 miles. And I remember stopping the car on the side of the road And I told my wife, I said, I'm fine, but I just need to stretch my legs for a moment. I got out of the car and walked behind it. And suddenly in my brain, like a Rolodex file started spinning. And all of these images were flashing in my brain of my whole life, like in little scenes, like an old-fashioned, penny arcade.
Yeah.
And I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. And my wife got out and says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. But something just weird just happened. And I got in the car and we went home. And I couldn't explain to her what it was because it would have been sounded too much like I was crazy or something.
Mm-hmm.
A few weeks later, a friend of mine, an artist lady that I knew, had an incident. And I was taking my wife to breakfast and my daughter to breakfast. And there was a dove standing in the roadway. And I said to the dove, get out of the way, bird, because I'm going too fast. I'm not swerving. And the bird flew right into the car front and rolled over my windshield, feathers. And my daughter started crying, you killed the birdie. My wife was bummed out. We went to a very grim breakfast. And on the way home, I got home and the phone rings. And my artist lady friend called. And she says, I just hit a man on the highway and he rolled over my car and died right at the time the bird hit my car.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know what that connection it was, but it was like so unreal that happened that way.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll share is that I went to work for the Volcano House Hotel as a food and beverage assistant manager. And the day I started my job, the Sheraton manager, who was the boss, he says, Patrick, before we start work, I'm going to take you on a little road trip. I said, what do you mean a road trip? And he says, just come with me. And we got in the car and drove about 5 miles down into the volcano crater to the overlook. And he says, I'm going to make an offering to the fire goddess, Madame Pelli. And I said, you are? He says, yeah. And he brought a bottle of gin and he had some cigarettes and he threw them all into the volcano crater.
Mm-hmm.
And he asked Madame Pelli to please give good blessings to me on the start of my new job at the Volcano House. Now I said, I've never heard of a corporation doing pagan superstitious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one night as I'm working in the hotel, my job was to close the dining room and finally close the hotel for the evening. It was in a national park. So, and there had been a Hawaiian woman walking around in the lobby all day in a red velvet dress with a ukulele. She didn't talk and she didn't bother anybody, but she kept going to the fireplace where there was a carved lava rock image of Madame Pelli. So at the end of the night, I had to get her out of there somehow, but she had no money. So I called the park rangers, and they came and picked her up and took her into the little community and let her stay at a woman's house for the night. Next morning, this woman disappeared completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that was possibly Madame Pelli herself.
Yeah.
And so I was taking pictures of the volcano erupting one night. There's a small volcano eruption going on. And I had rented a camera because I didn't have a good camera. And I took all these pictures, but it was getting dark and I'd have to walk through the darkness. So I said, I better hurry up, take all these pictures. I snapped all the film. And when I got them developed, the last two pictures had two scenes of Madame Pelli. One, the smoke from the crater formed a face of an old witch, which is exactly what people know Pelli to be sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The second one had a young naked woman climbing through the smoke. And that's the other form Madame Pelli takes. So I felt that my time in Hawaii was drawing me to meet up with forces from a metaphysical realm. And so what this all came to mean for me in the end was that I think I had been born in a past lifetime as the daughter of a Hawaiian kahuna, a priest. Mm-hmm. And Hawaiian culture said, you cannot even look at a temple because you're a woman. And it doesn't matter if your father's the priest, you can't face that way. And so it was like being frustrated all my life that I couldn't know about this spiritual realm. Mm-hmm. And finally, when I returned to Hawaii in this lifetime, it was to complete my knowledge about the metaphysical world. And at that time, all my astrology knowledge, which I'd been dabbling with and trying to figure out, it all made sense and sunk in. And suddenly, it's like overnight, I understood this metaphysical world, which is, the reason I go to astrology to help people today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you're an expert. I mean, I just mentioned when I was just trying to get to know you a little bit the other day, that I was a Capricorn, and the knowledge that you had just absolutely blew me away. And then we talked a little bit about Haley, and she's a Cancer, and you talked about the significance of a Capricorn and a Cancer being united. And I was just like, man, this man really knows what he's talking about.
And the irony of that is that there's way more beyond that.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. These are things that if you have a rudimentary knowledge of astrology, most people can kind of give you what I gave you then. But it's
Sure.
The reason I like to do this is because astrology is a natural system. And if you look in the first page of the Bible, first page, chapter 1, verse 14, it says, and God created the lights and the planets in the heavens to help men time the seasons of their lives. So that's like an ancient reference to God giving us planets as guides to run our lives by.
Yeah, absolutely.
In modern life, people don't look at this. They see astrology as 12 little paragraphs in the newspaper that are kind of fun, but they don't mean anything.
And, even really conservative Christianity just scoffs and condemns anybody who even reads their horoscope, in the newspaper.
Yeah, and there's a lot of misunderstanding in that too by the Christian people, because basically what the Bible was saying is that don't trust charlatans or frauds or fakers or people who charge you money to tell your fortune. It was the gypsies. It really wasn't the use of astrology, because ancient archaeology shows they found floors in Jewish temples with complete horoscope wheels showing all 12 zodiac signs. So really, they did use astrology. And the irony today is that the Vatican owns the largest astrology library on the planet, and they use it, just like Ronald Reagan's wife used it. I mean, the wisest people will learn it and use it because it makes life so wonderful.
Yeah.
You can see problems coming. You can understand how you're going to respond to problems. You can see how your relationship with another person might have bumpy spots, and you can understand that they have to be balanced to be fixed.
Yeah.
And so these are things that knowledge of nature is so urgent for people to use. We're destroying this planet. Every day there's more and more taken from it and very little given back.
Yeah.
And we don't need all the things we're taking. It's just an illusion that material greed and material wealth is so urgent and important. But when you die, you don't get to take it with you. And the Hawaiians had a great philosophy about life on Earth. They said nobody can own the land. The land can be caretaked by people, and that's how it should be seen. So I really value the Hawaiian culture is very much like the Native American cultures in their philosophies.
Yeah.
The land gives us our life, so we need to keep its life vibrant as well. And that starts with people understanding their own natures and understanding their own true needs. And if you've been religious all your life, then there's been a lot of ideas pounded in your head that I hate to say this, but so many of them are just made up nonsense. And some of them are valid. For example, the teachings of the alleged Messiah Jesus, the teachings are wonderful. And if you can live by those teachings, you're going to be a magnificent soul. But that doesn't mean that he really lived and those things are all things from some son of God, because there were in ancient times lots of people that were talked about the same way Jesus is talked about, around campfires, because nobody read. Nobody went to churches back then. They heard stories and they would pass them on. And each time a story got passed on, it got better, people to add to it. And these stories eventually got interpreted to be the whole story of Jesus. And that'll upset a lot of people if they hear this, because they don't want to believe that they've put so much energy into a non-real thing. But Jesus had real teachings attributed to him, and that's the important part. Not whether or not a real person lived or didn't live, or was this person or that person. Philosophically, I say if you believe in a God creation force, guess what? That's in you. You are created in the image of God. That means you should live your life as though you're a creative God. And that means do no harm. Take care, give love, grow, give peace, heal, share, and that's the kinds of ideas that I use to guide my life now. I'm not a Christian and I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person, and I love beautiful spiritual thoughts and ideas.
Yeah. Well, and this is just a little bit about me. I have my bachelor's degree in youth ministry, and so I did biblical studies and Christian studies. And that's where my academic knowledge comes from. And even then, I went to a little, private Baptist school, and my professors, even I can think of one professor in particular who said exactly what you just said. And we're studying, Christianity, and we very specifically talked about the other people that, philosophers and other historians and things like that, they wrote about these other people. And so whenever we would talk about them, then it was kind of, okay, so it's your decision to believe that Jesus is this person and is this Messiah. And then for me, though, ultimately, years and years later, that's what it comes down to, is do no harm. And
that's a Wiccan philosophy that dates back before Jesus.
Yeah, and that's what's so I don't even know the word. It's so interesting, but that doesn't even explain it well enough. Profound, yeah, is that all of these faiths and all of these truths it's about what your truth is, and really they all kind of overlap a little bit. And it's what a person in particular decides to make their own truth. But it always has to come down to do no harm. Like, that is a truth that has to overlap always. And unfortunately, there are people that don't necessarily practice that.
Sure.
That one thing in particular.
Brandi, a while back I purchased a audio study set of the New and Old Testament just out of curiosity. And they were produced by a religious scholar here in America named Bart Ehrman. And he's one of the foremost religious experts in America on Christianity. Mm-hmm. And I watched a lot of his program, and I kind of got bored by it a little bit. But years later, I found this thing that he published that said, after all of his involvement with studying the Bible and the two Testaments, all the science he studied and recognized, there's absolutely zero proof that Jesus was ever a real person. Now, that's coming from a dedicated Christian theologian, scholar. Mm-hmm. And, the problem we have in the world is there's a great disconnect between imagination and reality. And the best way I can describe this is, if you were to pick up a quarter, it's a two-sided coin, and we can pretend it's just two things. And you spin it with two fingers on the top of a table, it looks like a ball rolling around the table. Yeah. That's an illusion where two different things are producing a separate image. And Earth is like that same illusion. We like to think that Earth is a big rock in space. Either some people think it's flat, some people know it's round. But regardless, the illusion is that all the material in that rock is made up of molecules and atoms. And what's inside of molecules and atoms is basically empty space. So we have this consciousness that Earth is real, and therefore having money and owning cars and fancy clothes and the best food, and not having those things is punishment and suffering and misery. That's all not true. You can have joy whether you're poor or whether you're rich. Yeah. I've never been rich in cash or money, but I've always had joy in life. And I've always had the energy that says, let's make the best of a bad situation. Give me a lemon, I'll make lemonade. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same with religion. Religion and spirituality are not the same thing. Astrology will teach you that Sagittarius is the sign of inspiration and philosophy and ideas and wanting to be big and influential. And that's how all the churches were formed. And what are they looking for? If you go 90 degrees one way, you'll find the sign Pisces. That's the sign of spirituality. If you hug a tree or sit by a river or enjoy a bird singing, that's spirituality. Mm-hmm. And you can hear a bird singing and not even see the bird. That's the magic of the realm we live in. Yeah. And people say, well, what do you think Earth is here for, and why are we on the Earth? It's because we've been sent here spiritually. Our energy's been elsewhere, and now it's here. And it's to understand that this is one stop that our souls make on the path to completion. Here on Earth, we learn bipolar lessons. north and south, men and women, salt and pepper, night and day, sweet and sour, up and down. And people say, oh, you're right, you're wrong, you're right, you're wrong. No, there's no such thing as right and wrong. There is what you do and what happens because you did it. That's a reaction. So if you put, for example, lemon juice in with baking soda, it all foams up and goes over the place. Mm-hmm. So what your actions do on earth is what's going to cause the reaction that makes your life good or makes your life bad, unhappy. Happy or unhappy, it's your choice. And if, unfortunately, some people are born with horrible parents or cruel relatives, or they get bullied and abused. This is where a lot of the gay kids have so many issues trying to come out and understand their gender expressions and all. This situation can be all positive if people would just educate themselves a little bit more. Kids, anybody listen to this that's in school, do not drop out. Consider education for the rest of your life as the best tool for happiness and success, because without it, you're going to struggle in the darkness trying to bang out or steal or eke a living out of this earth that's just spinning in a hologram, trying to get you to understand there's a bigger picture to join up with. And that's where the Spirit of Jesus comes into play. Be kind to everybody, even if you don't like them. Mm-hmm. If you're angry today, wait 2.5 days, the moon will change signs. You'll have different feelings. If you kill your friend today, your karma is going to be horrible tomorrow and for a long time. But if you just wait a day or two, the moon changes, your feelings will change, and you'll have a chance to have growth spiritually and intellectually. So we see good and bad in cowboy movies, the white hat and the black hat. But really, those colored hats don't mean anything. That's just what society tries to make up as a fantasy. It's kind of like a view that we all buy into. Mm-hmm. But, what if the white and black hat are both great guys or both bad guys? Mm-hmm. Was Al Capone a bad guy? Was Robin Hood a bad guy? Those are all unimportant questions. They basically are metaphors to show you that you do have choices and options. And that's the key. And that's why I love astrology, because it sees everybody as being perfectly designed. Maybe there's some bumps and dents, but those can be hammered out and fixed with some patient work and some understanding. And that's why I do free horoscopes every week for whoever comes in. Sadly, few people come in, even though I put signs up and they all know I do it, because those people all feel that they've got a handle on everything. Mm-hmm. But I come in, I see them, and they don't, because they're dressed in dirty clothes sometimes. They're angry, they're swearing, they're unhappy about their life, their boss just got mad at them. So I know they're not getting the messages, and they're not looking for help either. My favorite saying is, when the student is ready, the teacher appears.
Yeah. Patrick, I am at a loss for words, and everything that you just said is something that me personally, I'm going to take that and probably re-listen to this a couple of times just so I can chew on all of that wisdom, because I really do think that was a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge that you just shared in the last, 7 or 8 minutes.
Well, let me share one more sort of excellent little story.
Okay.
In 1921, there was a man called an esoterist. He's kind of interested in the metaphysical realm. And he had befriended a crippled woman named Elsie Wheeler. And one day he took Elsie to a park in San Diego. And this is in 1921, so almost 100 years ago. And he took 360 paper cards with him that were numbered from 1 to 360, representing all the 12 signs of the zodiac by degrees. And he shuffled them all up and mixed them all up thoroughly so that they weren't in order. Mm-hmm. And then he asked Elsie to channel, or psychically channel, clairvoyantly channel an image, and he would write that down on each card that he pulled up. And when he was done, he organized them back into order and created a thing called the Sabian symbol mandala. And this thing has evolved through the astrology world several times, with great astrologers refining it and polishing it. And I've got the original, I've got the revised ones, and I've got the newest versions, which are stunning. What these things do is talk about a picture for each degree of the critical planets in your horoscope. And I'll tell you my 3 just so you can see how they work. My rising sign, which is my kind of future direction, is in Capricorn. And my degree for that one, the symbol is a fire worshiper meditates beneath snow-capped peaks. I lived on the edge of the volcano under snowy Mauna Mountain in Hawaii, and I was introduced to the fire goddess. So that symbol so appropriate to me. My moon sign, which is my emotional sign, is many game birds are busy feathering their nests. That's a little more confusing, but what is a game bird? It's a bird that's being raised in a kennel or a cage, and it's going to be eventually shot and eaten. So it kind of emotionally to me, it says, I'm living my life, making the best of what I can before my time is up, and I know it's coming. Uh-huh. My ego symbol, my sun sign, is Pisces, and my symbol for that is a master and pupil walk on a long walk in nature. And the meaning of that is that a wise teacher will take a student on a journey and tell them the truth about how the universe works and not alter it or try to make it his personal property, but just to share nature naturally. And I've come to grow into those symbols so perfectly. And there's 363 other ones for all the other people in the world. And that's what's so amazing. Every time I read someone their Sabian symbol, they kind of start to melt a little bit. Mm-hmm. Because when I tell them how the meaning is, they go, whoa, they just don't know how that could be. So accidentally or on purpose there. Now it's in their lives. And it's so much easier for some people to have a picture in their mind of how they're built and put together than to try to remember their whole horoscope, which can be kind of confusing at times.
Yeah. So where you mentioned that people come into your shop or your bakery. What exactly?
Well, I actually work for a recreational marijuana store here in Durango.
Okay.
I'm only part-time. I work 3 days as a bud tender, and I deal with a lot of people who come in with pain issues. Some have cancer. Some have aching joints. They have different physical problems. Some can't sleep. And so I recommend natural marijuana products that can help them either with arthritis pain or maybe some CBD products to help fight some cancer growth or, there's lots of wonderful, and the older people that I deal with mostly don't know anything except they say, oh, I smoked a joint back in 1970, and I kind of laugh. I say, well, it's changed a lot since then. Now there's so many benefits to marijuana. It's been proven to cure some forms of cancer. There's a product you can learn how to make on your own. It's called Rick Simpson oil. And Rick Simpson was a man who was facing death from skin cancer, and the doctors couldn't help him. So he went and experimented with marijuana plants and created a product that can kill cancer cells. Mm-hmm. And so basically, I like the healing aspects of it. Of course, it's fun recreationally, too. Mm-hmm. And now there's even science that says a marijuana smoker is probably a better driver than a sober driver because your heightened senses are going to keep you more alert typically. So I work a few hours there. And then on Tuesdays, I do free horoscope readings. It's a first come, first serve. I don't charge. I don't require tipping. If people want to tip, that's fine. Mm-hmm. The reason I've done this for like 6 years now is because the universe knows what I'm doing. And the universe supplies what I need happily. And, I'm at a level of my consciousness now that I just trust that the natural experience we're having on Earth is a wondrous one. My parents both died of cancer, pancreatic cancer, when I was about 40 years ago, actually. Mm-hmm. And they had diets high in sugar. I recently have changed my diet, and today I'm the lowest weight I've been in 40 years. I just hit 301 pounds. I was once 475 pounds. And
you're a really tall man.
I am, but last night I showed my husband my ribs for the first time. He'd never seen them before. And so I go, oh, this is great. So this play that we just did has been excellent too, because all the energy put into it's kept me from, thinking about anything but the play. Mm-hmm. And God, I think I lost 10 pounds in the production. It's just been wonderful.
Wow.
And my energy levels are up. I feel excellent. Everything in my life right now is vibrating on a positive note, and it's so good.
Yeah. I was just going to ask, how long have you lived in Durango?
I've been here with my husband for about almost 11 years now.
Okay.
And we'd lived in Farmington for a while. Before that, Tucson, after we left Hawaii. Mm-hmm. People go, why did you leave Hawaii? It's so beautiful there. Yes, but Hawaii, like every place, has its downsides. You can't just get in the car and take a road trip.
Yeah.
You can drive around the island in 5 hours. That's it.
And airline tickets aren't $50 anymore.
No, they're not $50 anymore. Even to fly in between islands used to be $5. Now it's up to like almost $100.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that do commute from island to island. That becomes very expensive. But I love Durango, and I found Durango using astrology. My husband had been through here before, and we weren't certain. We knew we couldn't stay in Tucson because I developed allergies to everything. But while in Tucson, we did something interesting. We had a television show called Living with Astrology. And that program was, we did 110 episodes over 4 years. And it was basically bringing the knowledge that astrology offers to the public. And after we left, a friend said, you guys have been gone out of Tucson, but they're still showing reruns of your old shows. And I said, that's great. They must have liked them. But we moved up to Farmington, and from there we did a road trip to check out what's in the Four Corners area. And I looked at the astrology charts, and I blended my husband's and mine into what they call a composite chart and started plugging in different cities on my mapping program. And Durango just stood out. Mm-hmm. And we checked it out, and God, we just love it. The valley I live in, ironically, is called the Valley of Souls. And that's named after the Animas River, which today they say is the River of Lost Souls, but that was never really the official name. Mm-hmm. But the River of Souls is a perfect place for me to be living now, because I think the soul is the reason we're all on the planet. And I can, with my astrology, help anybody know what their soulful purpose is in being here. Everybody on the planet was born with a natural gift of some free talents that were innate or born into you. And those talents come from a spiritual place called the lunar south node. Ancient people called this the tail of a dragon that wrapped around the earth as the earth traveled around the sun. But the north node, where the dragon's head goes in front of the earth, that north node is the key to why you're alive today. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't tell you that you have to do this or do that. It just opens up a door of potential and possibilities that you can understand and then pick from a buffet of choices in your own life to guide your life to a balanced state where everything starts to get better. And once you get your spirit in balance and your soul in balance, then you can look at your sun and your ego and your emotions and your Mars for energy and Venus for aesthetics and all the other planets. And they're going to cause little bumps and grinds as you go through your life. But every time a bump comes along, you'll know you can handle it now. You don't have to freak out and go, I'm crying. Life is so horrible. I just posted a suicide article today. And some of the more amazing news coming out of how to prevent suicides is that you need somebody to really care about you and just keep checking on you all the time. And it's a simple thing.
Yeah.
But the sad thing is that all the great churches of the world are failing in supporting people spiritually.
Yes.
Now we have churches that are hateful. They're burning torches and crosses and threatening to murder people again. I said, this is not a good religion. And even the Inquisition, burning people who don't agree with you, killing witches because you don't understand they were the natural healers and they threatened your divinity or your superiority. I just found a great article. They found the coffin of the first Pope, Pope Pius I. Mm-hmm. And in his coffin, he was mummified. Under his pillow, they found herbs to kill the stink of the decaying body. But they also found documents, and in there were some documents that said the church created the mythology of Jesus to get control of people. This was their construct. And so this bishop that was embalmed was called the first official pope, born in Aquileia, Italy, died in 155 to be buried in the chapel of Aquileia. They moved him in 1787 to a cathedral that got demolished. The coffin was open. Everyone was surprised. The body was in perfect condition. And the most surprising thing of all was they found documents narrating different versions of the alleged life of the Son of God, Jesus of Nazareth. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm not criticizing people who believe in Jesus. I say continue doing it. It's the best guide you've got at this point. But this suggests the senior leaders of the Catholic Church hid evidence that proves the history of the Messiah was an invention to carry out the purposes of the order. And there were others before Christ, and these were the stories all get blended together. There was Horus in Egypt. There was Mithra. There was Krishna in India, Dionysus in Greece. They were all the early Jesus stories that became the Jesus of Nazareth story. So I got curious one day, and I did a horoscope to find out what was going on astrologically at the time that, say, Jesus was born. And I did a horoscope. It's hanging right in front of me right now as we speak. And this says that on February 27th, -6 or 7 BC in Nazareth, Israel, at 12:45 a.m. in the morning, there were like 7 planets in the sign of Pisces. And Jesus has been attributed with creating the age of Pisces, which is the age of beliefs, hopes, dreams, and non-reality, spirituality instead. And it's so stunning because on that day, what the people saw as the Star of Bethlehem was really Jupiter and Saturn coming together in the sky, making a bright, what looked like a single amazing thing.
Yeah.
That brought the astrologers, the 3 magi's from Persia, to come to Israel. Well, why didn't they go to India looking for a Jesus, or going, were they even looking for Jesus? The stories say, no, they were looking for a rich person who just had a kid so they could do his horoscope and say, this guy's going to be a kingly type person.
Yeah.
And that's how this all got kind of convoluted down the road. So blending the metaphysical and the mythological and the spiritual and the real has been my kind of quest all through life. I don't want to throw any of the bad stuff out, but you do have to clean up the way it's been misedited.
Sure.
So anyway, I told you I can talk and talk and talk, right?
No, it's fascinating. It really is. And, the things that you're talking about, I've studied in with some depth. And so it all really makes sense to me, the blending and all of that. And then I think Haley
it's just like that quarter spinning on the table.
Yeah.
The 2 sides look like there's multiple sides, and that's how the illusion of religion can dupe some people who don't go further than just what they've been pounded into their head.
Yes. And I feel like, for me personally, I'm somebody who, I don't want to stop learning. And also I'm not somebody who just is settled with the things that I've been told. I commend you. The best thing anybody can do is keep learning. Yeah, absolutely.
Don't stop and think you know it all, because you don't.
Yeah. And I have had special opportunities to I don't know, to teach and to be in front of young people. I was a youth minister for a couple of years, and I was constantly telling them that they had to dig deeper than what they've been taught, all of their lives in their families and things like that. So when I was supposed to be telling them this is the way it is, I wasn't comfortable doing that. And that's why I'm not a youth minister anymore.
Well, you know what happens is, if you get into an organization like, say, Christianity, and you belong to a certain sect, or say you're Roman Catholic to start. We today have over 25,000 different Christian religions. Now, that's a problem. How come there's not just one true religion?
Right.
Everybody keeps making up new versions to suit themselves, and that's why you can't trust religious reality. Historically, you can understand certain things, but it's not. 25,000 Christian sects is ridiculous.
Yeah. I agree. No, I will 100% agree with that. And that's where, for me personally, it's about what my truth is, and what my relationship is with the universe, and my relationship is with what I perceive as God, and, all of those things. And so it can look much different than other people. And for me, that's special. So,
you know what? George Carlin, the famous stand-up comic who passed away, he was a funny guy. He went to Catholic school, and there's a funny little bit he does where he says he's a student in Catholic school, and he asks to teach the priest. He says, hey, Father, is God so powerful that he himself can make a rock so big he cannot pick it up? And I thought, well, that's curious. The answer is yes, God can make a rock so heavy that he can't pick it up, because God is allegedly omnipotent. That means he is everything. So he can make one that he can pick up and one he can't pick up. He can create himself at will. He can kill himself at will and come back. He didn't need a son on earth. He could have done anything he wanted. And if there's a God, I'd ask that God, why did you create childhood cancers? Why did you create starvation and pain and suffering?
Yes.
And religious people will say, oh, that's because man's original sin. Nonsense too. That story is another made up one. The whole truth is, if God is omnipotent, why didn't God just make a wonderful world for everybody and not have all this crappy crap going on? Because this is the bipolar holographic illusion Earth.
Yeah.
And if you buy into one story and stop there, you're in trouble. You're out of balance and you're going to spin and be angry. And I meet so many people who, once they bring up something religious, get angry with me when I ask them questions about their own faith that they have no clue how to answer.
Yeah.
And I apologize and back off. I don't want to upset people. But I do want to wake them up to realize that they're living in a box.
Well, and I just want to go back to, you have really said a lot of things for just me personally, and I think that a lot of people, it's going to settle with them, and you've said things that we have to chew on, and it doesn't matter if you are a Christian who practices, that faith, or you are a Buddhist, or you're anything. It doesn't matter. The things that you've said today are things that anybody can sit and chew on, and it's about figuring out what that truth is for you.
You remember back in 2012?
And I appreciate it.
Remember when the world was supposed to end in 2012?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. The Mayans had a calendar called the Tzolk'in. It's a 5,000-year-long calendar. They had several of them, like one phase, another phase, another phase. Well, the modern Mayans came about 600 years ago, and then we saw the Spanish come and wipe out all this stuff. So what did 2012 really mean? Well, in the middle of the last Tzolk'in calendar, somewhere right in the exact center, there's a pattern, looks just like a big X. Right in the very center square is when the Buddha appeared on Earth. In the very last squares are the nuclear bomb going off. The Buddha appeared before Jesus, before Muhammad, before any of the other religions. And Buddha had an interesting philosophy based on his material awareness. He was a rich man in life, and he escaped from his palace where everything was given to him, honey and wine and beautiful things. And he got out in the streets and saw disease and suffering and poverty and hunger. And he says, something's weird. And he refused to go home until he figured it out. And he wandered and wandered and wandered till one day he sat under a Bodhi tree and he said to himself, I think I understand it now. Life is a physical series of problems that need to be solved. And once you have solved the one right in front of you, happily get up and face the next one. And this is the truest thing you can understand about life on Earth. There are problems everywhere. And either you are part of the solution and you know the other half.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Patrick, this has been a fabulous conversation. I appreciate you so much taking time and just sitting with me for an hour, pretty much, and sharing your knowledge. And with your knowledge is experience and your story, and I just appreciate you so much right now. Is there anything else that you want to add before we hang up? Or
well, you asked me about living in a small town. Durango's a small town. It's a beautiful town in a remote part of Colorado. It's hard to get here, basically, for most people. And what I've found in my horoscope is that both my partner and I have a Taurus influence on the space that represents our home. And I looked into the origins of Durango, and Durango was born and incorporated as a town in the sign of Taurus. And we have all the Taurus things here. We have the beauty of the land. We have the great restaurants. We have art galleries. We have the Durango Arts Center, theater productions, ballet. And this is all about appreciating the true treasures of the earth. And that's why we live in Durango and love being here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you're just a special person. And everything that you said has just intrigued me and sparked just something inside of my brain.
Well,
yeah. So
and
thank you
that
so much.
Leads you to find discoveries that make your life better.
Yes, absolutely.
And the one thing I say to everybody when I sign my emails is practice kindness. Just practice kindness. You don't have to like someone to be kind to them.
Yeah.
You don't have to understand them or like their race to be kind to them. It doesn't matter if they're a man or a woman or a kid. Just be kind to them,
Yeah.
and your life will begin to change, and it'll be the most valuable, simple lesson to ever get mastery of.
I love that. Thank you.
All right, my pleasure. It's been great speaking with you today.
Yes. This has been another episode of Small Town Expectations. We will talk to you in a couple weeks.